The message is what you say to people. The market is who you're after. You have to have a match between what you say to people and who they are. If there's a mismatch on that, they don't recognize themselves in what you're saying, so they ignore you.
Welcome to Multifamily Insights. I'm your host, Johnny Casman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. Listen, if you're enjoying this show, you know what I'm going to ask you, right? So I need you to leave me a rating and review. Okay, the ratings and review, they help other people find the show, but it also gives us some feedback so we know what to focus on moving forward to help you become the best investor you can be. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. We got a great show today. We are talking to Tom Zeeb. Hey, Multifamily Insights listeners, if you're looking to invest beyond multifamily, make sure you check out the Invest Beyond Multifamily Conference this fall, Wednesday, October 11th through Friday, October 13th, here in Cincinnati, Ohio. Listen, you're going to learn how to invest in non-residential commercial real estate and master the art of scaling your commercial real estate business. Now, this event is being hosted by Ash Patel, guest on the show, and he's featuring great speakers such as Nate Barger and Joe Fairless. If you want to learn how to invest beyond just multifamily, be sure to check out this event October 11th through the 13th. All you have to do is go to investbeyondmultifamily.com/fall-conference. Again, that's investbeyondmultifamily.com/fall-conference. Now, back in 2001, Tom Zeeb was broke as a joke. A near-death experience while whitewater rafting pushed him to find a new way to break free of his 9-to-5 job. And his very first deal almost took him under as well. But real estate investing saved him in the end, both personally and financially. We're going to bring on Tom Zeeb to share a little bit more of his story. Let's welcome to the show, Tom Zeeb.
Hey, John, how are you?
Hey, Tom, I'm doing great. Listen, I went over your bio at a very high level, kind of left it there in suspense like a cliffhanger. So why don't you take a couple minutes and fill in some of those gaps?
Sure. Look, the main thing was I had a day job. I was a few years out of college. I felt stuck. Didn't particularly like being told what to do by the boss, didn't particularly like all the other colleagues, didn't particularly like the commute, and everything just kept getting worse and worse. And I had been a very fiscally irresponsible young man, and I had sunk myself into $113,000 worth of debt. And so I was stuck with a small issue. How on earth do you pay that off? It's hard, and the interest rates make it nearly impossible. So I was stuck, and I knew it. So I basically just escaped on a trip. I said, "Oh, let's just go on vacation. I'll ignore the problem like I always have." And then I would go whitewater rafting and fall off the raft and almost drowned. At which point I was going, something's going to change. What have I done? I've done nothing. I got to get out of here. If I get out of this, my head comes above water. Things are going to be different. Well, my head came above water. I got back home. I wanted things to be different, but nothing was different. Nothing at all was different. How could anything be different? All I had done was escape from my problem. I didn't solve it. And then a series of things happened that got me out.
I love it, man. Well, I love that you got out. Going through that challenge sounds like, it was quite a trying time. You mentioned it being $113,000 of debt. Is that including like college loans, or is that just like, okay?
That's college loans and an absurd amount of Visa, MasterCard, and American Express, and probably a second and third round of Visa, MasterCard, American. It was college loans and revolving credit had sunk me.
Got it.
Before I even started.
So at this point, you get back, you make a commitment to yourself that things are going to be different, things are going to change, but nothing actually changed. So how did you actually crack that code?
This was interesting. A friend of mine out of the blue handed me a book that I'm willing to bet most of us have read, handed me a copy of Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I understood my problem, and I finally saw the way forward. He says, buy cash flowing rentals, buy multi-unit properties, go and do it. Of course, it doesn't tell you how. So I went and just did it. I bought a 6-unit building in New York City. And that wound up being a big, giant, colossal mistake since I didn't know what I was doing. I wound up with 6 professional tenants, none of which were paying anything. And now I was drowning even deeper.
Wow. So you have these 6 tenants. They're professionals, meaning they're not paying rent. They understand the system. They're basically seeing you as this newbie landlord that they can just take advantage of. How did you manage to navigate that?
Oh, I went under on that one. We went into pre-foreclosure. We eventually got an investor to take it off our hands in a short sale. So no, I lost that one. But during that time, I had realized I had found that, wait a minute, there's some actual how to. There's different ways of doing this, and there's other ways out. And during that time, I discovered wholesaling kind of accidentally. So focus on marketing for property, negotiate good deals, put them under contract. But instead of messing around with them myself, I started selling them to other investors that were actually good at rentals and that were actually good at fixing up properties for resale, for rehabbers. And I started just selling to them because I realized something. Rehabbers get busy rehabbing, so they don't have time to market to find more deals. And landlords get busy dealing with tenants and toilets, and they get busy doing all that they stop marketing. So the fact that I could market and negotiate and put a good deal together, I always had somebody to sell it to. And I realized, well, that's the part I like. So why don't I just focus on that? And I dug my way out of a hole in no time flat. It took me just about 6 months.
So how did you develop that skill, right? Because to me, that's the hardest part of this business. And I know a lot of times people say, "Oh, well, if you don't have a lot of capital, why don't you get into wholesaling?" But to me, wholesale is hard, right? You have to do the things you mentioned. You got to be able to find a great deal, negotiate it, lock it up, get under contract, but also understand what those renovation costs are going to be. You have to understand like who those people are who are going to buy it, what are their needs, and then negotiate with them so that you can sell it or get at least assign it to those individuals. So to me, that's a really, you know, that's a more challenging role than I think just going out there and being a buy and hold investor or even a flipper. How did you develop those skills, especially in such a short time frame?
Maybe I slightly disagree because it's effectively the same thing. The rehab or the flipper has to do the same thing. They have to find the property, they have to negotiate it, then they get to rehab it. The buy and hold investor has to market for it, has to negotiate it, then they get to buy and hold it. So I don't find it to be any more or less difficult than the other exit strategies. At first, on the inbound side, I find it more on the outbound side. So I got good at it by finally understanding, like focusing in on marketing and playing around with that and taking a bunch of classes at my local real estate investors association. And then on the negotiation side, I got particularly good at it when I found a fellow named Roger Dawson and started studying him.
I love it. I love it. Well, and I think it's really interesting, and I appreciate your perspective on that. And I guess the part that I was getting at is there's for the wholesaler, you got to build in your profit, right? So finding a deal and negotiating, that's one thing, but the wholesaler's got to build in their profit on that second round of negotiating for that rehabber, where that rehabber says, "Oh, I can still make great profit on this deal," and that wholesaler kind of gets paid, and they're getting it, from that seller who's getting it out, selling at whatever price. So by the time you add those layers, that level of profit starts to drop for that investor, and that's why I think it gets more challenging because if that rehabber goes directly to that owner, he has more wiggle room as far as what his
Yes.
profit potential is. So that's why I'm saying I think it's a little bit more challenging.
Yeah. So here's how I solve that. I realized that, wait a minute, if I spend a lot of time talking to rehabbers and figuring out how do you buy? Like what are your calculations? And so they would tell me how they figure out what a deal is. And that's what they would be aiming for if they had done the marketing themselves. That's what they would aim for in the negotiation. And so therefore they would buy at that price all day long. So I go, well, if they're going to buy at that price all day long, when I get in there to negotiate, I've got to be better than that. Whatever that price is, I got to be better than that because now I'll know they'll buy all day long at their price. So as long as I get it for less than their price, I'll be all right. And what I found was happening was I was consistently getting it less than their price from getting really good at negotiation. In fact, it makes negotiation my main skill because that's how I'm figuring out how much I get paid. If I know somebody's going to buy at 100,000, then if I can get it for 95, I'll make 5. But if I can get it for 85, I'll make 15. Right. And so it just became a game of let's see how much better than that I can do.
Hey man, I love it because it's so important. You just gave a huge insight of understanding like who your end buyer is. And this is true for, I guess, flippers as well, right? You got to know your ARV. You got to
Yep.
know, what that number is, and then understanding that exit plan. And this is true for commercial. This is true for, flipping, wholesaling. You have to understand what that exit number is. And then that's going to help you understand what your profit margins are. And then that's going to help you determine what your all-in number needs to be. For you, figuring that out with the rehabbers, then going to negotiate. I think that's a powerful insight because you knew what that number was going in. I
Yes.
see so often people find what they think is a good deal. They lock it up, get it under contract, and then they go and turn around to sell it, but they don't know what that other person's price is. So now they're just shopping deals around, hoping someone is willing to pay a certain number for it. Can you talk to us about that strategy a little bit?
Well, yeah, and I think those people are giving wholesalers a bad name. They're putting something on their contract just because, and then they're running around trying to mark it up. But if they're marking it up beyond what the people want, right? If a rehabber doesn't want to pay that much, they're not going to buy it. If a landlord doesn't want to pay that much, they're not going to buy it. And then you're stuck with this trying to pass it off as a good deal when it's not. If you flip that around like I did and start with going, I know what they want to buy it for. What would they be going for if they were doing this on their own? And then get in there and work and hustle and use my techniques to get the price down further. You'll create a spread for you, not trying to lock it up and then push people. People aren't going to go higher than they want to go. You can't count on that to get paid. You have to go lower than what they're willing to buy it for, and then that extra money is yours. If you're
so the biggest challenge obviously is that negotiating, right, and getting that person to accept lower than maybe what they want to accept. Can you talk to us about how negotiating and having some solid negotiating skills can make such a big difference?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's you're never getting somebody to go lower than they're in agreement with, right? I'm not putting it's not a Godfather offer. I'm not putting a gun to anyone's head and insisting it's their signature or brains on the contract. It's bringing them down to what is their true bottom line. If I don't get to a price that they're willing to agree with, then they'll say no. And that's fine. That means I got more work to do, or I need to come up. And if I can't, well, then it's just not a deal. So I'm never really forcing anyone to do anything they don't want to do. I think that's kind of a perception problem that people have. And they also tend to blame it on wholesalers, even though it's really all investors doing it. We're the ones getting the bad name. But because a lot of people just don't act in good faith. I want to get to the lowest price that the seller is voluntarily willing to go. And I do that by starting to pinpoint what their problem is. So digging into the pain, packaging up a solution that would work so I could show them how I could solve all of their problems, and then persuading them to say yes to that. So it's those three things that I'm after when I'm negotiating. And if I don't do that, then they're not going to say yes. They're only going to say yes when it makes sense for them. But I've got to show them how it makes sense for them. And really, John, the key is price is not the number one issue in the negotiation. I'm solving their problem and getting them out of trouble. That's their number one thing. And if I get their number one thing right, then I can also get my number thing right, which is price. So then we have a win-win, which I know some people think, oh, well, win-win's kind of cheesy and corny. It doesn't work. Well, it does. Because as long as we're not arguing about the same thing, we can have a win-win. If we both need price, well, then there's going to be a winner and there's going to be a loser. But if they need their problem solved and I need my price, we can easily set it up so that both of us win.
Yeah, we always talk about like a motivated seller. And what you're getting at is there has to be something other than price that is driving the discussion. Because if you're both looking at price, then yes, it does come down to who kind of wins the negotiation. But if they have some other thing looking to solve, well, that's where that focus is for that individual. You said three things. You said identify the problem. You say package up a solution. And what was the third thing you said there?
Persuade them. So pinpoint the problem, package up a solution that would work for them, and then persuade them to say yes. You got to learn how to get somebody from saying no to saying yes to you.
I love it. So I'm assuming you already call those your 3 Ps, right? So
yeah, I
pinpoint the problem.
They start with P for a reason.
Yeah. So I don't know, we talked about kids, but I've got a 9-year-old and he's doing English, right? So I'm like having to relearn all this stuff that I've absolutely forgotten, like alliteration. I'm like, when do you ever say these things in real life? But I'm gonna say it today, right? So you got your 3 Ps, right? So pinpoint the problem, package up a solution, and then persuade them that your offer, your solution is the right solution for them. I love that. That's really intentional, really clear for I think all of our listeners to be able to follow. Talk to us about maybe some negotiating tips that we can start employing right now.
Yeah, well, let's talk on that persuasion front, because that's where the tips fit in particularly good when you use particular techniques. So the first one that I always use in each and every negotiation is I flinch. So anytime anybody says any number to me whatsoever, I act like I was attacked by the number. So John, say a number.
7 billion.
What? 7? Whoa, that's a lot. Now, You're smiling. So how do you feel about your number right now?
Uh, man, maybe I'm questioning that number.
You're questioning your own number. No, I didn't say give me a price on a house or a price on a car or on an apartment building, or it just say a number. You said a number. I flinch. You're questioning your own number. So very predictable response. Everybody does that. So if you flinch every time you ask somebody, how much are you asking for the property? And then no matter what they say, whether it's reasonable or not, doesn't matter. Just flinch, because you're making them think, oh, there's something wrong with this number. And it starts to put downward pressure on the pricing. That's the first negotiation technique I use absolutely all the time, because people are always saying numbers when we're negotiating real estate. So that one's easy. The second one I do is called bracketing. So, a bracket, you create a bracket around something. Now, John, where do we tend to meet? What's the most fair spot to meet?
Numbers wise?
Yeah, on anything.
In the middle.
In the middle, of course, right? We all know that. We meet in the middle. Nothing more fair than that. So what bracketing means is I'm engineering the middle to where I need it to be. So the middle is my price. So I'm going to change your number a little bit, because instead of 7 gazillion or whatever, I'm going to say, let's say you're talking 200,000. But if my target is 150,000, you're $50,000 higher than I need you to be. Well, to create a bracket, so to make 150 the middle, where do I have to start?
100.
100, right? You're 50,000 high. I've got to go 50,000 low so that we move towards the middle. Well, great. Well, except you know what? I would never offer $100,000 on that property, because of the third thing I want to tell you, which is specific numbers. I wouldn't offer 100,000, but I would offer 103,579. Because how does that number sound to you now?
Very specific.
Yes, very specific. And so what does that make you think?
There's a reason.
Yeah, there's a reason. He must have done some research. He must know what he's talking about. There's a reason he chose that number. Now, is there a reason I chose it? Not really. I pulled it out of thin air. Because I always put specific numbers on my starting offers, because it really looks like I know what I'm doing. It really looks like I put some time and effort into thinking it through. Therefore, it comes across more credibly and more seriously to the other person. Even though I'm laughing as I tell you this, right? It's not a joke, but it comes across anything but a joke. It comes across serious. And so the combination of just those three things, if your listeners start using those now, watch what happens in your negotiations.
I love that, man. You talked about flinch, bracket, and then use a specific figure when you are negotiating. Let's talk more about, kind of how you're able to scale and do these different deals, right? So you've been able to kind of grow using these techniques and kind of building kind of systems to market and do more and more deals. Talk to us about kind of just the business overall, right? Taking these strategies, taking kind of the things that you just told us, and where things are today for you, and just kind of how much you've been able to, not how much, but how you've been able to grow leveraging kind of these techniques.
Sure. Well, my main thing is that I've got to market for people with problems. If I want to find good real estate deals, it's not a matter of going on the open market and go, those people are expecting to get everything and more, particularly the last few years, everything and more. That's not what I'm after. I'm after somebody that has a problem that needs to sell the property even more than they want to sell it. And maybe it's run down, maybe it's having a little bit of a problem, maybe they're personally having an issue. I want to speak to them in my marketing. I want to get them reading my marketing and nodding, going, yeah, that's me. Let me call him and see if he can help. And then when they call me, then I start the negotiation process, right? I pinpoint what their problem is. I talk about the future with them, get them to kind of see how good things can be once they're free of this problem. Package up a solution that creates that for them, and then use all my persuasion techniques and negotiation techniques to get them to say yes to it.
Man, I love that. You talked about the marketing and talk to the marketing. I know a lot of people feel like their marketing is maybe ineffective. Can you talk to us about, why marketing tends to die and what you can do about that?
Yeah, I think it tends to die for a couple of reasons. First, let me give you two big reasons. The first one, the message to market match is all wrong. The message to market match is wrong. It's just flat out wrong. So you're putting the message is what you say to people. The market is who you're after. You have to have a match between what you say to people and who they are. If there's a mismatch on that, they don't recognize themselves in what you're saying, so they ignore you. They ignore you like every other ad out there, right? TV, radio, billboards, internet, yeah, sports game, right? There's ads everywhere all the time. It's so easy to ignore unless you see something that speaks to you. And then you're going, oh yeah, that's me. And I want to draw it in. So that getting that message to market match right is critical to making sure that they know who you are. The second thing that I think destroys all marketing is a lack of repetition. I call it multiply. You got to multiply your effort. You got to repeat your offer, repeat your message, the exact same message to the exact same people more than one time, more than 2 times, more than 5 times, more than 10 times. You have to keep drip, drip, drip on them so that it's there when you're ready to go. I bet if people think of radio or TV commercials they could sing along with, we all have them, right? There's just songs stuck in our head and we're going crazy. Well, that's not because we heard it one time. It's because we've heard it so many times we can't get it out of our head. So we know marketers do that to us, but then when we turn around and market for real estate deals, or we send one letter one time, one postcard one time, we run one ad one time, and then we wonder why nothing happened. There's no repetition.
Yeah, good points there, man. You talked about the message to market match, making sure that we understand what that trigger point is for people to see themselves in that communication. I think that's a really important point. The second part is just lack of repetition. It takes more than one message to reach out. I think particularly when you're talking about, motivated sellers, because they may not recognize that they should be motivated at that time, right? You may be thinking of other solutions or trying to work through a situation, and maybe that message doesn't resonate with you on the day you receive the communication. He talks about the patience of that, especially for someone who, is going through a situation where they do need to sell, or they probably have a situation that they want, but coming to the realization that, what, I do need to go ahead and do something different than maybe what I was doing.
Yeah, well, that's what I use the pinpoint phase of my negotiation for. So yeah, I'm going to kind of get them curious in the marketing. They respond to find out more. That what I'm doing when I'm pinpointing is I'm peeling off layers of the onion. I'm asking them questions about their problems, and I'm making them wallow in their pain a little bit. And I don't mean that in a negative, nasty, awful way. I'm doing it as a favor to them. Because if they're not pushed to think through their pain, if they're not pushed to think through what their problem is, that problem might take them under. So it takes somebody like me to do them a favor and make them actually think through the problem. Like, hey, what are you going to do if you don't sell this? That situation doesn't sound good. How are you going to get out of this? And let them answer. And then when they can't, and they're kind of swimming in their problems and their pain a little bit, they're more likely to turn to you for the solution. And I would also make the argument that the more you can, there's 2 things that occur. You're getting them to visualize what life is like without the problem. Therefore, they can almost taste it. And then you're the one that can provide that solution. And also, if you're the one that was able to describe their problem to them better than they could describe it themselves, mainly because you helped draw that problem out of them, well, they're most likely then to assume that you also have the solution. Because if you understand the problem, you must also have the solution. So it works wonders.
Yeah, Tom, I think that's really powerful for people to understand is that it's not being manipulative. It's understanding how to help people when they haven't even reached that conclusion for themselves. And at times, especially if it's something personal, right? If you inherit a home, or you have just different situations that happen, you're behind on your taxes, whatever it is. A lot of people, they're just not ready to come to grips with that situation. And I imagine, well, you said something earlier, so maybe I shouldn't imagine that, because you said what you do is you put your communications out there when people reach out. So you didn't say you pick up the phone and you cold call everybody you ever met. So talk to me maybe a little bit more about that strategy. Sure. It sounds like more of an attraction strategy than more of a cold calling strategy. Maybe you could just shed a little bit more.
I try not to do cold calls, all these cold calls, because that'll wear you out fast. I mean, that'll wear anyone out. It could wear me out too. I'd rather make warm calls, if that makes sense. I'd rather have a lead that already has some warmth to it. And that's usually what I'm finding from my marketing. So I don't mind making outbound calls. I just want them to be warm. But what I really like is marketing to people that should have a problem and trying to trigger people to call me. Because when they call me, they're at least medium warm. I mean, they still come in. It's still my job as a negotiator to take a lukewarm lead and turn it into a red hot deal. That's what we do when we negotiate correctly. Take a lukewarmly red hot deal. So I don't mind being in the warm waters, but I want to make it hot, and that's when you find the good ones and learn how to dissect what their problems are, really dig down, package up a solution that could work, and persuade them to say yes.
I love that, man. And I know you coach and help other people as well, right? It's part of your Traction Real Estate Mentors. Talk to us more about helping other people kind of learn some of the negotiating skills that you've been able to hone through the years and help them grow and maybe, kind of get unstuck so that they can see success in their own business.
Yeah, I find a lot of people are flat out afraid of marketing or intimidated by marketing. I think largely because people confuse it with high pressure sales. Now, admittedly, there's some overlap. I mean, maybe they're overlapping circles, but they're not tightly overlapping circles. So I think people's fear of negotiation, once they learn, like if they just practice those 3 things I just taught you, watch how good you do with just those. Now, those are 3 techniques. I've got 52 that I teach all my students. So get good with those 3, watch what happens. Then I think you go, hey, the rest of these 52 are going to do me really good as well, particularly when they're that easy to understand, that easy to digest, and that easy to implement and use.
Yeah, those are great points right there. For folks who want to learn more, they go to your website, tomzeeb.com. That's Zeeb.com. Tom, I know we've talked about, finding these motivated sellers who are interested in understanding that problem, pinpointing that problem. I know a lot of investors, particularly in the commercial space, are having a little harder time finding sellers that are either motivated or have this issue. Any advice or tips specifically for folks in the commercial space?
Yeah, they're out there. The sellers you need are out there. You know why they're out there? Because life is out there, and life is always happening. We always have a business, commercial, residential, otherwise. We always have a business because if we're focusing on people with problems, life presents people with problems. There are people dying. There are people getting older. There are people inheriting property. There's people that can't pay it anymore. There's people that had some sort of tragedy or loss in their life. And I'm not trying to make it sound like bottom feeders. I don't view us as bottom feeders preying on people's problems. If anything, we're getting out there helping people that have situations that have really kind of screwed them to the wall. And now we've got to say, hey, how can we help them out of it? So I don't know, if somebody owns a 50-unit apartment building, and then they're getting older, maybe they want to pass it on. Or what if that person dies and they pass it on to their heirs? What if their heirs don't have the least bit of interest in it? Those heirs have jobs on the other side of the country. All they know how to do is go to their day job, come home, and they're going, oh man, dad did all that crazy stuff in real estate. I don't want to deal with that. Well, wouldn't it be great if you stepped in and offered to take that off their hands exactly as it is? You'll probably get a very good deal there because it's someone who's not even interested in having it. So we always have deals as creative real estate investors because life is always creating problems for people.
Yeah, I would implore everyone to just really think more about what you said as far as life. Because I think too, there's a sophistication that comes in the commercial space. It's like, well, why not just list it with the broker? And certainly some people would list it with the broker. But to your point, some people may not have pinpointed the problem just yet. And they realize it's a problem, but then it's like, okay, well, list with the broker. I got to go get all these documents. I got to go do this. I got to go do that. And it's even more work. And who knows how long it's going to be. And I got to pay this person a 6% commission or whatever it is, right? So now there's all these other things that come into it versus if you could get ahead of that, have the conversation and actually solve some of the challenges people are facing, that may create opportunities. It certainly may take more work, but I think that, for great deals, you may be willing to put in a little bit more work. Again, Tom, folks, they want to learn more, connect with you. They can go to tomzeeb.com. We're going to go to a round of insights. Are you ready?
Cool.
They say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you want to grow as a multifamily investor, you have to spend more time with other multifamily investors. And an easy way to do that is to join our apartment investing mastermind group today. Just go to casmancapital.com and click on the mastermind button. Now, as a part of this group, you'll get access to expert trainings, group coaching calls, industry news and updates, as well as all of our webinars and workshops, including our 3-hour workshop on raising capital. Again, if you want to be around other multifamily investors that can help you scale your portfolio today and grow your network, make sure you're a part of the Apartment Investing Mastermind. Just go to casmancapital.com and click on the mastermind button today. We kind of talked about this a little bit, but give me a failure or an apparent failure that sets you up for later success.
Failure or apparent failure. Well, my first 6-unit building was obviously an outright failure. I owned it with my sister because we were both in the same kind of dire financial straits, and they threw a mortgage at us because it was right around the turn of the century, right around 2001, and they were giving mortgages to anybody that could fall. Anybody. And gosh, I can't imagine why everything melted down in 2008. It's shocking. They were giving mortgages to people like my sister and I. Well, one of the tenants took my sister's head and smashed it into the wall when she was trying to collect rent. But basically, things were not good. But out of that, Phoenix burning itself down to the ground, I rose out of the flames, and I'm happy about that by learning how to do things right.
Man, well, I appreciate you sharing that. All right, give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
Okay, digital and mobile. For me,
mobile, yeah.
I use a program called Deal Machine that has just been phenomenal for me to identify motivated sellers of any property I'm driving around. I can pull up the tax record instantly on my phone in the car. I can do a lot of great things for it, and it's been phenomenal.
Yeah, we had David Lecko, the CEO of Deal Machine, on the show not too long ago. So great to hear that.
It's awesome stuff.
Yeah, give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
Well, I already mentioned Rich Dad Poor Dad, but I'm pretty sure probably everybody's already read it. So let me give you one maybe a little more offbeat that I found to be quite good for my mindset, my overall. Nowadays I would call it my frame. There's an author named Robert Ringer, like ringing a bell, Ringer, Ringer, Robert Ringer. It's called To Be or Not to Be Intimidated. And I think your listeners would particularly like it because he was a commercial agent, commercial broker. And it's all about his life in the business jungle and understanding how to maintain your frame when you have all these other people coming to grab from you and trying to cheat you and cut you out of your commissions and everything else. And I got enormous amounts out of that book. I think in terms of mind frame, I loved it.
Give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
Daily habit. I'll tell you, I think sometimes I struggle, like probably a lot of people do, with getting focused. I want to sit down and get something done, but there's distractions. There's other things to do. One thing that I do, and I've told my students to do, and some of them have said, wow, Tom, I didn't think that was going to work because it sounds so lightweight, is put on music to get yourself focused, but not just any music with a particular beat and a particular tone. There's apparently some science behind this, but if you look up electronic study music, even if you don't like electronic music, try it, see what it does. So something about that beat will keep you moving ahead faster. And then quite honestly, work towards a deadline. But if you don't have a deadline, what do? I pull out my phone and I put the timer on it. And this is an old, who was it? Eugene Schwartz used to do this with an egg timer. Just set it to 20 minutes or whatever. I'm so lazy, I'll just hit 22, start. 22. I got 22 minutes and 22 seconds to get something done. Go. And now suddenly I like whatever it is between that and the music, I get focused and I start working on the task. And the alarm goes off, and half the time I'm going, I'm not done yet. I want to keep going. And you turn the darn alarm off because you're in motion, and that makes all the difference in the world.
I love it. All right, give me your number one insight for negotiating.
I'll give you some awesome techniques to use. I think insight-wise is to remember the other side needs to get this done too. So I think a lot of times we keep thinking like, they're the ones with the key, or they don't want to do it, but there's pressure on them to get this done. There's pressure on them to say yes. So part of what you're kind of needling for and pinpointing for is, what are those needs? What are those deadlines they have? What's going to happen if they don't say yes to you? And you want to paint that picture for them. So I think that kind of constantly remembering that there's pressure on the other side as well. That way you don't feel like all the pressure is just on you, and then you're kind of begging. You're in a strong spot. You're in a stronger spot than you realize, because they've got to get the deal done also.
All right, let's lighten the mood. Where are you located right now?
I'm in Sarasota, Florida.
All right, Sarasota, Florida. Give me your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
Favorite place to eat in Sarasota is there's an excellent restaurant up on the very northern side of Longboat Key called Mar Vista. And I love going up there. It's beautiful. It's right on the water. I'll jet ski up there and just dock and eat. And it's absolutely beautiful. So that's a great place to be.
All right. Sounds like a great place. Listen, you gave us some great insights talking about kind of your journey and, starting off in deep debt, getting through that, figuring out, real estate might be the place. failing completely on that 6th unit, but realizing that you had some skills in wholesaling. Appreciate your perspective on the skills that it takes to be a successful wholesaler. More specifically on negotiating, but negotiating and marketing. Those are kind of the 2 things we talked a lot about, and just giving us some of your insights and tips. I really like your 3 Ps there, right? So make sure we, first of all, pinpoint the problem, that we package up a solution, and then that we persuade that owner that our solution is the right approach. Again, if you want to learn more about Tom and some of his projects he's got going on, some of the coaching that he has available, you can go to tomzeeb.com. Tom, I want to thank you again for being a great guest coming on Multifamily Insights, and we look forward to staying in touch with you. Hope you have a great day.